It has been a hard and emotional few days since the rallies on the weekend in Charlottesville, Virginia. The city's decision to remove a Confederate monument prompted what's been described as the largest gathering of white supremacists in a decade. Counter-protesters had converged along a street when suddenly a Dodge Challenger barreled into them, hurling people into the air. One of the people who died amidst the chaos was Heather Heyer. Today, her service was held at a theater in Charlottesville. Her mother, Susan Bro, struggled to climb the stairs to the lectern, and as she made her way to the microphone, she told the crowd she had aged 10 years in the past few days. But once there, Bro remembered her daughter's legacy and reminded others to live up to it.
You need to find in your heart that small spark of accountability. What is there that I can do to make the world a better place? What injustice do I see? You poke that finger at yourself like Heather would have done, and you make it happen. You take that extra step. You find a way to make a difference in the world. My child had a high school education. My child was no saint. She was hard to raise because everything was a negotiation. Not kidding, but you know what? She was a firm believer in whatever she believed, and let's do that. Let's find that spark of conviction. Let's find in ourselves that action. Let's spread this. Let's have the uncomfortable dialogue. It ain't easy sitting down and saying, well, why are you upset? It ain't easy sitting down and going, yeah, well, I think this way, and I don't agree with you, but I'm going to respectfully listen to what you have to say. We're not going to sit around and shake hands and go kumbaya, and I'm sorry, it's not all about forgiveness. I know that that's not a popular trend, and the conversations have to happen. That's the only way we're going to carry Heather's spark through. So remember in your heart, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. And I want you to pay attention, find what's wrong, don't ignore it, don't look the other way. You make a point to look at it and say to yourself, what can I do to make a difference? And that's how you're going to make my child's death worthwhile. I'd rather have my child, but by golly, if I got to give her up, we're going to make it count.
That is Susan Bro speaking to attendees today at the funeral service for her daughter, Heather Heyer. Joining us now to talk about how to make things count are two people. Taslim Jaffer is a freelance writer, and she's based in Surrey. She joins us on the phone. Also on the line is Dan Moskovitz. He's a senior rabbi at Temple Shalom in Vancouver. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us. Taslim, when you hear that plea from Susan Bro, what goes through your mind? What are you thinking?
Well, first of all, as a mother, my heart just breaks for her having to go through this. But I truly admire her strength and her courage and sharing her daughter's message. Obviously, her daughter Heather got her conviction from somewhere, and I truly admire that. I think that it's a conversation that every parent needs to have with their child, and every citizen needs to have with the community around them, and I just commend her for doing that.
And Dan, for you, Susan Bro talked about looking for that spark of accountability within ourselves, even though it may be uncomfortable to act on. Where do you think we should start? What are those questions we need to ask ourselves?
Well, I think that first of all, again, to hear her words, and I just saw that Dunkirk about World War II, and this is a mother who lost a child in battle, of a war that America fought long ago, but that and the world fought long ago, but continues to be fighting. I think that you know, her daughter and those that were out there on the streets, they could not stand by to see America and the world slip back into this racial hatred that really never went away. And I'm emboldened by her act of courage to stand up, and all of those that do. And I think that we all need to. We can't just be silent, and we can't just sit on Facebook. We have to we have to raise it up and to say this is not allowed. We can't have this in the world anymore. We fought wars to defeat racism. We fought wars to defeat Nazism and anti-Semitism, and we can't allow it to bring its head up above water again.
She talks about having those uncomfortable dialogues and not letting them slip by. And you know, sometimes people say, well, that was one offhanded comment. I'll let it go. I'm not going to say anything, or I'll just sort of turn away. I'll ask you both, what is the danger in that, Dan?
Well, silence is assent. To say nothing is to allow that ideology, that hatred, to fester and to gain ground. I think that's part of what the Trump presidency and those that he has surrounded himself with when he began his candidacy by attacking Hispanic immigrants to the United States, and then other groups throughout the racial rainbow of the United States, and then the media and Jews and others. You have to say something. You can't just let it go. And this societal veneer is thin. And when you peel it back and you allow something that was not permissible to suddenly become permissible again, it takes decades and generations to unlearn the hatreds that have been taken so long and fought so diligently against to put down.
And Taslim, for you, what are the consequences of that, of not recognizing the magnitude of ignoring, what may seem like simple offhanded comments?
Right. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with Rabbi Dan. I would also like to just further that point and say that this is a time for the people who have enjoyed privilege until this day to actually be the ones to speak out just as loud as those who face injustice and racism. It's a very uncomfortable conversation to have, but when people who experience privilege speak up and tell other people in their family or their communities that what you said is it's actually offensive or this is actually racist, that's where we're actually going to see a lot more change, I believe.
And you mentioned that you're a parent, you're a mother. How do you tackle these issues, discussions around white supremacy in your family?
Yeah, so I have to handle it, obviously, in a developmentally appropriate way. For example, with what happened in Charlottesville, I was talking to my 10-year-old daughter about it and, explaining that there is a group of people that believe that not all human beings are the same, that there's a group of people that are better than everybody else. And, we know that this is not true, but these people feel so strongly about it that it's turned to a great hate. And now they are, spreading this message on the streets and on the internet. And I would rather be the one to tell her this than somebody on the playground or somebody on the streets, or for her to catch a glimpse of it on the news or over my shoulder as I'm reading something on my phone. So these are just conversations I feel I would rather have as a mom. I would like to be the first line of information for my children, and I to do it in a developmentally appropriate way. I want her to be aware. I want my children to be aware, but not afraid.
And what is her reaction?
Surprise. My children are surprised when I tell them that there are people who hate other people, because they don't experience that. They have friends of all different races and creeds, and it's not something that we talk about in our home, that one group is better than another. So it's very surprising ideology for them, to grasp.
Dan, this is a conversation you have with your congregation. How do you move this discussion about intolerance into the community at large?
Well, we certainly talk about it all the time within the Jewish community. It's very much a part of our history and of our present as well. I think that the part of it is that you need to be engaged with people beyond yourself. You have to have a plurality around your table. You have to engage with people that are different from you, that can join with you and partner with you in defeating racism and anti-Semitism and bigotry around the world, and that the brotherhood, the connection, the humanity that is created when good people come together to fight against the evil in the world, That's what builds a society. That's what builds a community. And so what we talk about in our congregation is who can we partner with? Who will join us in this fight to not only defend our rights, but whose rights need defending as well? Because we were once those people, and we still are those people. That's part of the history of all of us. And every culture, every community has its own history of oppression. And when we bring those together, we can fight the oppressors.
And very briefly, we're talking about these everyday conversations you have with your congregation, and Taslim, what you have with your family. We're looking at these rallies being planned in Vancouver this weekend, an anti-Muslim rally, an anti-racist counter rally. What is the value of public protest?
Well, again, I think that to be silent is to show your assent. To be silent is to say that you don't care or you're indifferent. So it's very important that we protest publicly and that we don't allow this on our streets. By the same token, I don't feel that it's appropriate to be standing there and shouting in the faces of the racists and the bigots. I would have preferred that the counter-protest in Charlotte had been someplace else, that the response had been like the Jews of Skokie, or the community of Skokie outside Chicago, Illinois, back in the 70s when Nazis marched there in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood, and they left the streets empty and let them shout at themselves and hear the echo of their own voices. And then someplace else let us gather and show our support for understanding, our support for plurality and for acceptance of others and tolerance. Because it's going to lead to violence. It should surprise nobody. They wanted violence, and we've been defending and fighting against this kind of ideology, again, since the American Civil War and World War II and beyond.
Well, I have to leave it at that, but I really appreciate your time and joining me for this conversation this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's Dan Moskovitz, who's a senior rabbi at Temple Shalom in Vancouver. Taslim Jaffer is a Muslim, a mom, and a freelance writer in Surrey. Love to hear from you. How do you speak out against injustice or intolerance in your life? You can give our Talkback line a call, 604-662-6979.